I don't know where people are at. I'm confused about the world. I'm confused about reality right now. Like there's so many differing points of view from the mainstream news and what you find online, and feel like there's not a lot of deep conversation going on. It's at least I feel that way. It's like surface level. It's hard to get below the surface right now because it feels a little bit disconnected. Like we're coming back together after a long time apart, and there's some topics that are difficult conversations. And how do we have those difficult conversations? Like how do we come back together and love and appreciate one another after what we've just been through?
And maybe we can't, I think that's part of what, accepting it all, embracing it all. What might need to happen is that we just accept the fact that some people don't even want to check it out, like the other side. They just don't want to look at it. And like I have conversations with personal loved ones of mine that flat out said, nope, not interested. I'm not looking at that. And it's like, some really good quality information here. It's not some dude in his mom's basement with a tinfoil hat sort of thing, right? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like there's some really valid, talented journalists out there online. In fact, for those of us who've seen both sides, might say that it's more professional journalism happening online than there is on television. So, but to get people to look at that and just to even talk about what's going on, and to consider the possibility that there actually is a deep state. There is a group of people that, even though they're totally open about it all, the WEF, etc., that have an agenda for the planet, for humanity, to get ordinary people to open up to that, because it is so insanely extreme, the agenda, that it just sounds so you couldn't write a better sci-fi conspiracy theory than what's actually happening. So no doubt they don't want to, they're not open to believing it. Sounds nuts. So yeah, back to where we were there. Maybe we will never have a conversation about that so much, but rather just learn to just be together and just hang out and enjoy each other's company. I'm thinking of my family. I haven't had any relationships that I can think of that have broken apart from all this. A lot of people have, so I've been blessed that way, but I guess there's still time.
Yeah. Well, it does sound crazy too, just like what you're saying. It's I wonder sometimes, am I nuts here, and how much of it is just planted information that's out there online, and it's meant to divide, and how much of it is actually like somebody's trying to get the truth and trying to awaken us to a bigger picture and a bigger story of what's actually going on. Because when it goes deep into even the spiritual, even the extraterrestrial, like there's infinite possibilities. So my mind's open to infinite possibilities, but realistically it's I guess my mind's also grasping for the upbringing I had, and just a state of reality that we can just get along as humans, and that feeling of home. What's that feeling of home now? It feels like things have changed. They've changed drastically. There's a bit of normalcy. People get into this place of somewhat of a return to normal, but it's not really a normal anymore, is it?
And I don't think we want to really return to normal so much, right? Like there's definitely a need for change. And yeah, that back to where you started there, about believing what to believe and all that. Like what I do anyway is, I'm the yin yang man. It's all got to be both somehow. It doesn't have to be anything, but I'm as I search for the truth, I repeatedly discover that whenever I find something that certainly appears to be true, I'm talking about an objective reality, I can imagine the opposite also being true. I can create a scenario where it also makes sense that the opposite could be true. So, and not getting into the absolute truth that all is one and one is all in that yet. That's another thing. But so, for example, you know, let's just jump right in, like the vaccine. Like, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of these videos and reports by online journalists, podcasters, etc., coming up with these things that the embalmers are pulling out of people's bodies, and they can't embalm bodies anymore because it's like plugged, and they're pulling out these growths that they're calling clots, but aren't technically clots. They're sort of some protein mass. I'm not great at the technical details and terminology of things, but and I personally put all the evidence together and allow my mind to be open to everything that I've come across in terms of information and just what makes sense, like patterns. Like, there's not necessarily scientific evidence in terms of, like you're in a laboratory and you've got hard evidence. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm obviously very interested in that too, but I'm talking about things that fit more like logically, which is, let's be clear that logic is a mathematic. It's also a philosophy, but logic is if X then Y sort of thing. There's this mathematical equation involved when you put things together. At some point, maybe I'm jumping a little bit, but it's related to this logic as math. The statistics are such that the chances of what appears to be true due to the sheer volume of evidence, even though you have no hard laboratory scientific evidence on things, it's much more of a conspiracy theory to think that the conspiracy theory is not true because of the volume of what's going on. But of course, most people don't hear about the vaccine injuries or about the WEF's openly talking about wanting to reduce the population of the planet and so on, about the harm in young women, to get into some of the detail that has been discovered, the harm in the reproductive system of women, their menstrual cycles being whacked out of balance, women 70 years old hanging out playing bridge talking about how their periods have come back, all the way to the all the myocarditis and mostly in the men, the young men, and this stuff is, and there's some of the news, Fox seems to be, and to be clear, I've been left politically all my life. Like, Noam Chomsky was a hero of mine and still is, but I'm primarily a truth seeker, so I'm looking for the truth wherever the hell it is, and right now it seems to me that the right side of the political spectrum seems to be speaking more truth than the left. And so all that was to say about just sort of looking at things with an open mind, using logic, reasoning, trying to fit the pieces together. And the other side is using my basic intuition. So some speaker or some broadcaster is speaking, I actually make contact with that person. And are they being sincere? Does this person sound like they're actually giving their honest opinion? Or do they sound like they're acting up there and reading off a script or being controlled in some way, Yeah. So that has to, that's the best we got, right? I mean, I don't have access to the government documents and etc. So,
well, it's so important to have conversations and maybe bring it back to an intellectual level. Discernment is a pretty powerful tool. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on discernment are. Like, how do you describe? That's a big word. So, What does that really mean? And I mean, if anybody's listening to our conversation right now, just letting them know, like, we're sitting here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the state of the world, people looking in at Canada from the outside. It has this tonality of a totalitarian state, where the government isn't really listening to the people, maybe doesn't have the best interests of the people in mind. There's a bit of division happening, and here we are sitting in the middle of it. At least truth seeker, I resonate with that huge, just trying to find what is the truth. what are the facts? How do we move forward from here? How do we get along as a society? How do we take our power back as citizens just to participate in the active construction of the world that we live in, and discernment? What is that? Is that a starting point to seeking truth? And is it just being able to patiently have conversation, share some ideas, bounce them back and forth, and poke some holes in it and try and see, is this relevant, without getting all worked up and defensive? If you push down one of my ideas and it doesn't make sense, am I able to let go of that as an idea, and I don't have to stay attached to it, and it doesn't have to become my identity? But that takes a lot of effort as well. It's risky to let go of your worldview and to entertain opposing ideas. So how do we go about a conversation? And maybe in the depths of our conversation today, we go into a little bit about consciousness and enlightenment, but starting with just the basis of this reality. Like, where are we right now after 2 years of some isolations, differing opinions, our prime minister calling a fringe minority out for being misogynist and racist and not apologizing, not bringing the country back together, and that division continuing. There's lasting effects to what happened, right?
He just doesn't quit. There's a lot there, but so what one thing that just jumped up is Klaus Schwab openly acknowledged that he's very pleased with Prime Minister Trudeau, and his penetrating of the cabinet. And I just again, when I say making contact, I mean putting my consciousness on that man's consciousness as best I can. I listen to him speak as openly and objectively as I can, not only hearing his words, but making connection with the conscious being that he is, and trying to assess if he's being genuine and sincere or not. And it appears to me like it's a total, like if there was ever a politician that really has embraced what politics has become, let's say over the last 50 years, which is just a Hollywood. Basically, it's the scripts or speeches are written. It's all the way to the Gulf War, that one ridiculous famous shot where there's like a fake palm tree in the background and the wind, and the reporter loses his hat, and it was a set. It was supposed to be like a dust storm in Iraq. It was a total set. So we've got some really ridiculous stuff happening that's being fed to the people as truth, that is totally staged. And so I would say, I personally think that Prime Minister Trudeau isn't really even aware of how deeply indoctrinated into that system that he is. He's just doing what he thinks is his job. And there's a lot in that statement, but in terms of putting on an image, I think he thinks that's what you're supposed to do, rather than just being a genuine human being and speaking what you truly think. He's following a script, and he's so this is off the discernment. This is my opinion, what I think is going on there. I really can't see a better way to describe him in terms of politically or legally as a traitor. Like a prime minister of a country, president, whatever the case may be, that puts a global agenda of being run by people who are not elected ahead of the country and the people in that country that elected him, ahead of their personal interests, because of some belief that I'm doing the right thing, like it's mad bloody scientist, and the whole global warming. Yes, seems clear the Earth is warming, but there's just this common belief that we're the main cause of it, and it's, from what I've seen, listen to people like Bjorn Lomborg and these that have really dug into United Nations, all the data that's available. There is not a lot, first of all, that we can do about this, because we are not the major cause of this. It's just the natural flux, sunspots. I don't know if they know what the actual cause is. But back to what to do about it. Starving people out and destroying the middle class doesn't seem like a good answer to me. So it just seems all wrong. But the discernment piece, again, a little bit off track. But what I think people need to do, if we're to get through this, everybody has to be willing to believe in things that they find unbelievable, because what's happening is unbelievable. So what I think is happening, I get this argument from dear old friends that are really smart and are sensible people, that as I've known them all my life, but are really in the system and naturally don't want to believe that it could be as bad as it appears to be from my perspective and others. They'll say, things like, the reason I don't believe that because it doesn't make any sense, because I'll say they're not looking at it, or they're getting their information from the wrong sources, or not open to other sources. And no, it's none of that. It's just it doesn't make any sense. But from my point of view and yours, those of us who have looked at the other data, the other information, that is to say information that isn't presented in the legacy media, it clearly does make sense that it is as hard to believe and crazy as it is. And what people are doing, if I could get to this succinct statement here, is they're confusing what is reasonable with what is believable. They believe that's not reasonable. They say that's just not reasonable. But what they really mean is that's not believable to me. Because actually reason, another word for logic, it is very reasonable. It makes perfect sense that this is going down right now. When you look at the world is I don't believe in everything such as people like Jordan Peterson, who I take on as he's got a huge message and very important, but I don't believe everything he says. I don't believe that we're being good stewards of this world. We're this, and he admits, and others, the oceans are in big trouble. They talk about more trees ever than before. Yeah, but they're all 20 years old. All the old growth is almost gone. The Amazon is being continually clawed back. So, people have to be willing to put the truth above all else if they want anything to get better. Because if you start to take actions, which is what Peterson and others' big complaint with Prime Minister Trudeau is, taking actions upon a false reality, then you're just building, a house of cards. You've got no foundation, and so you're building this fake system, or not fake system, but a system on a belief that what you're building it upon is true. And if it's not, then the whole thing's going to crumble down sooner or later. If you believe you're, in Winnipeg, if you believe you're in Calgary, you're a pilot. I use this little metaphor. And you just imagine you're a pilot, and you're in some sort of ship that has no windows, and it's all just dialed in electronically, and you set your course for Vancouver believing that you're in Winnipeg, but you're actually in Calgary. You got a problem, because you're going to end up in the Pacific Ocean. You need to know where you are in order to get where you want to go. It's nothing crazy here. It's basic logic. And we haven't made our priority to know where we really are. And I don't personally believe that a lot of these people are interested in that. I think they know exactly where we are. I think it's a malicious intent, and they just want to get rid of a lot of us so that they can make the world a more comfortable place for themselves. That is my truth. That's getting to the whole spirituality and Book of Revelation and all that. Like, as crazy as that may sound, it seems to me it's unfolding right now.
I wonder sometimes if it's people acting as saviors for the planet, like from an intellectual level, thinking, well, this is what's absolutely needed. We're overpopulated. We got to get the population down, and this is for the best interests of everybody and ourselves. And so there's selective decisions being made, but it's missing a foundation, like you're saying. Like it's almost a illusion that you can think your way out of these problems. That you're taking on the role of God instead of participating in a universe that's intelligent, and that there's more to it. And if you were to just let go, the whole thing will balance itself.
Yeah, bringing in the spirituality aspect of it, like believing that they can play God and solve. They actually put forward an agenda or to block out the sun. Did you hear that one? Like only 8% though. But it's like this isn't a joke. This has actually been tabled at the United Nations to perhaps we could block the sun out by 8% and
for what purposes? Why?
Just to slow the global warming down.
Really?
Yeah, that's and they like people, the chemtrails are real. This is not a conspiracy theory. There's so many of these so-called conspiracy theories that have been totally admitted to by the people who have played out those events. But not publicized or reported by the legacy media. So chemtrails is an attempt to use chemicals to alter the environment for it's there's the back to the spiritual piece, I guess, spiritual for lack of a better word, like intuitively. Like intuition's a thing. It's not some make-believe, we all have had ordinary moments in our lives where we, like, from the simple thing, you just know somebody's going to call, or there have been actual experiments run by, Rupert Sheldrake, ex-physicist turned metaphysicist, did it's on, Russell Brand does a great podcast with him. How he tested with cameras and to see if dogs know their owners are coming home, and that's even in animals, and they're using, and cats as well, but a very, very high percentage of the time they know they're coming home, and they did all the relevant experimentation, as in changing the type of vehicle so the dog couldn't hear that's the, they're used to hearing that truck pull in, or at that time of day, changing the time of day, but the dogs, I think it was running 83% of the time, the dog got up and got all excited before the person was even in the driveway. So there's something, and this also is sort of at least alluded to, implied in quantum physics, with non-locality, and that there's some, call it an ether, that we can communicate through, and for the Inuit, for that matter, have been claiming to do that for forever because of the need to do that. It's sort of like a person that loses their vision, their hearing gets very good, if they don't have a problem with their hearing. When you lose one thing, the other will strengthen. So and maybe that's partly what's happening now, is we're moving into, we're going to need to evolve and have other capacities that are not ordinarily considered human in order to get through this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that reminds me of Bruce Lipton in his book Spontaneous Evolution. He talks about an experiment with a bacteria that's lactose intolerant.
Right.
They put it in a petri dish. They put it in a environment that only has milk, basically, or lactose, and the bacteria has to either spontaneously evolve or it's going to die because it can't withstand that environment, and it ends up evolving spontaneously. And for better or worse, the environment that we've been put in, it's quite possible that as human beings we have the capacity to also spontaneously evolve to survive our environment, or go by the wayside and perish. So that's just an interesting experiment that leads us to where we're at now, and there may be a lot of opposing forces against us or out to get us that we're not aware of, or nefarious purposes, malicious purposes, whatever it is. We're all becoming more and more aware of the world we live in and the environment that we're in. But this spiritual piece, it really stands out to me because that has been a growing part of the conversation.
Yeah.
That more and more people seem open to, at least the conversation seems more commonplace, that people are willing to talk about God or a higher power or some sort of universal understanding. It's an individual connection, but that there is some spiritual war going on. And that seems so intangible that it's not like it's an individual experience, isn't it? Like, I'm curious about your own journey. Like, what led you here? Why are we having this conversation
Right.
now? And what is it about spirituality and your understanding of it that it plays an important role in today?
Right. Again, well, for me personally, it's again that it's all yin yang to me. So logic and intuition are two wings of the same bird. Spirituality and science are two wings of the same bird. In fact, it's and there's sort of no end to it. So spirituality is science yet understood, and science is a deepening of understanding spirit, and chicken or the egg. I don't know which came first. I guess if I had to bet, like, actually the chicken or the egg part really I can't pick in that scenario, but I would have to say that spirit, consciousness is primary. It seems pretty clear in the double slit experiment that we were talking about last night, that the conscious observer is somehow creating this. So, and there's just so much data out there already on all that, with people putting their cancer into remission by meditating. There's been experiments done with high levels of success. So, but personally, I'm digging for the truth on this, and so I've become more and more open to things that I never used to be, like my roots, the Bible. I'm really quite fascinated with the book of Revelation. Like, I basically think that's what's going down right now. I think it was all written in code in a sense. Some people believe that, and another piece about me, yin yang, and again, is that, as above, so below. So the answer is always both, but the truth is one. So somehow, there seems to be a lot of reason to believe that there is a battle going on in the objective world between dark forces and light forces. But it's also happening within, and it's happening within each of those people that are directly involved in that fight, you might say. I'm talking about, deep state all the way to so many unknown sort of warriors that, like apparently military generals and people who actually are fighting to serve the people that they represent, that they're supposed to serve and protect. I think that's appears to be going down. If I could get into that, like what types of information have come across that lead me to believe that. The satellite data imagery suggests that, here we go. During Trump's first 4 years, Guantanamo Bay grew, I can't remember if it was 4 times, or like the size of that complex grew. You could see it happening on satellite. And why? What was he putting more terrorists? No, apparently, again, where does this come from? Probably the same with you. I've come across so many reports and articles through the Telegram threads that we're on, through the various email lists that I belong to. I forget where these sources are, but they're all there. I could go back and start, scrolling through and find them. That these, where was I going with that? talking about? What was the most recent thing we're
Well,
on to?
spirituality and then the light and dark forces on the planet. And
Oh, the Guantanamo Bay, you know, that apparently, you know, his whole I'm gonna drain the swamp comment, Trump. There was apparently tens, like up to 50 high-end officials who were arrested and charged, and there were secret military trials being held at that complex. That's why it was expanded so much, because they created a secret court essentially and prison for these people who've been in the whole thing with the sex trafficking and the and you can, there's further evidence like some of these things, like this piece of information can be looked up, and I don't again remember the numbers, I'm poor at the numbers, but and even the terminology, but these sort of closed cases, the Supreme Court always has a handful of cases on file that are closed to the public, maybe 4 or 6, you know, typically. When Trump came in, there were dozens overnight of these closed cases. That can be found easily in looking it up, Freedom of Information Act. And why? You know, so, and I actually think that's a piece of it. Like Trump being the belligerent, egomaniac, you know, annoying, like I never liked the man. Never liked the man before. I was annoying, like Apprentice. Like I wouldn't spend 5 minutes watching that. Was it The Apprentice? Yeah, you know. And yet, when I started to see some of the things that he's actually, the policies that he's putting into place, from the point of view of our, you know, the broader point of view that there's a deep state, and and you've got JFK's famous speech. Like, if you want some proof, people, let's look at JFK's speech. Of course, it's been taken down, you know, probably 100 times, but everybody's got it downloaded, so it keeps popping up on YouTube over and over again, talking about the word secrecy is where he starts out. It's an hour in some long speech, and then it's in the middle of it. It was a certain address at a banquet or something that he just apparently just threw a curveball by the sounds of it. Like, people didn't see this coming, and he just in the middle of this speech started talking about the deep state. And you know, I'm trying to remember some of these actual like quotes that he said. Essentially, there's a secret government within the government that's beyond my control. I believe that actually Bill Clinton actually said those very words. So, but JFK went on in quite a lot of detail. And, you know, you've got Eisenhower that talked about it as well. And this isn't any secret for those who are actually looking for the truth. So, yeah.
yeah, I'm curious about, like, not everybody, I got to bring it back to hope too, even for myself,
Yeah.
is not everybody has some wicked agenda. Like, most of the people are
Right.
good-hearted, right? Like, that's what gives me hope for the future, that I can get deluded into thinking that that this goes so deep that it's all just false information, and we're just being divided, and
Right.
and that's the end of it. Like, people who have power corrupts absolutely, and there's no hope for tomorrow. But I try to keep reminding myself, well, there's good people, possibly there's good people doing good things, but without somebody coming forward and just saying, hey, look, you know, we're sort, like, trying to bring people back together. There was a senator in Canada, he gave a great speech. He was talking about a prime minister's role and job of bringing the country back together. And our prime minister today never stopped and apologized for the words that he used. He has not acknowledged any of the wrongdoings, the division that he's created. He has made no attempts to try and bring the country together and unite the country. It's stayed divided, and this is top down. So how do you fix something that has been broken from the top down? How do you come back from that? But I try to find hope in the fact that there's people have good hearts.
Yeah. Well, what comes up for me there, it's not a direct answer to the question or the inquiry, but this thing we got into last night, that bring truth forth with love to serve justice, right? So let's just for the moment allow ourselves to believe that the shit's going down like it is. There's an agenda, and how are we to stop it? So of course I do believe there's good people within all organizations. There's like CIA, you name it. A lot of these organizations are built such that nobody knows what the other people are doing. So, and some people are actually working to find out what's going on within those secret organizations, and some are doing jobs that they don't even know the harm they're causing, and etc. But that's another story. So let's suppose that this is all going down like we're suggesting it is, and that's actually the case. Why? Like, why? From a spiritual point of view, I want to jump into the spiritual point. And you can bring in the book of Revelation, you can bring in the Mayan prophecy, the Hopi prophecy, the famous one, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Let go of the shore, let the river take you. Look around, see who's with you, flowing down the river, and celebrate, for this is a time of transformation. And transformation isn't easy, it's difficult. Like, a being gets... You gotta believe, if it's all just a material world to you, then none of this is like, I lost you a long time ago, right? But you're just not looking. And if you believe it's a material world, first of all, cutting edge science doesn't suggest that it is. It's quite clear that it's something more going on. Consciousness is playing a big part. Einstein died trying to figure that out and couldn't. So it's probably because the paradox cannot be got with the mind. But so all these prophecies talking about a time of transformation, the 26,000 year cycle, and what are we to do about it? I personally think that the way forward is to begin with no judgment. So to bring truth forth with love, to serve justice. I'm going to talk about me in the story. So I've been giving enlightenment intensives for 10 years. I've been in that practice for 20 years, giving an enlightenment intensive on May 18th to 22nd. Theenlightenmentintensive.com. You can go to my website, and my mentor is Lawrence Noyes. And it's funny, even within my own community of enlightenment intensive truth seekers, that's in a word what an intensive is about, is seeking the truth within, towards the absolute sort of thing. It's a Zen Buddhist sort of spin-off, let's say. They largely believe everything they're being told, much of that community, and it's difficult for me personally to embrace that. I want to get angry at them and like, how about having the same level of discretion from the information you're getting on the outside as you do on the inside, when you ask yourself, who am I? And watch your insane mind give you all the answers. You don't believe your mind. Why? You believe in this chatterbox in front of you, so that's another story. But at a retreat, a sadhana retreat, sadhana is a Sanskrit for personal relationship with God, with the divine, where surrender meditation was the main practice. We did other things as well, but Lawrence Noyes, my mentor, who's taken over for Charles Berner, who brought the Enlightenment Intensive to the world, surrender meditation and clearing is his three big gifts to the world. On that sadhana retreat, he said something that just got me. Is like, what the soul wants is truth, love, and justice. He kind of talks like that. What the soul wants, is truth, love, and justice. Very serious. And I just like, yeah, that resonates. And then he goes on to say, and the justice part really triggers people, something to that effect, right? Because people think of justice as this sort of punishment, and especially in the modern, postmodern era, that, there is no right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. And There's no objective truth. Of course there is. I'm digressing here, but I mean, what the hell else is there going to be other than the truth? That is 100% logical statement and actually can be gotten intuitively, in a sense where this intuition and logic are no longer two but one realization of the absolute truth. That there's, what else is there going to be but the truth? Is it going to be something false that exists? Because if it exists as false, then that's the truth. Let's suppose, no, there's two truths. What would that be then? The truth. Still one truth, that there's two truths. You can't beat the truth. The truth is all there is. Whatever that is, that's what is, right? The truth is what is. Now, what is, to actually get to the details of it all, is another story. So science goes at it, breaking it down, and spirituality goes at it from an inner, like, is it really, what is it? Is one question. It's a deep Zen koan. What is it, or what is this? And inquiring into that, like, what is this? One can I'm already sensing, is there really, you can sense that which gives rise to me is in the snow. It's the same essence, source, right? So Lawrence says the soul wants is truth, love, and justice. And through my men's community, MDI, Mentor, Discover, Inspire, you can go look that up. Head Smashed In, division of MDI, which I just recently sort of stepped down as tribe shaman there, the sort of spiritual role in that tribe of men. We have a big thing around purpose. Find out what your purpose is. And we run workshops and weekend workshops and other exercises to help you discover your purpose. And through that, and just actually it all started just on one of my basic weekly meetings after a DeMartini talk. He likes to talk about your mission. If you know DeMartini, he uses that word mission. And one of my men asked me, and I was like, I don't know what my mission is, my purpose is. And it's Eric Mortimer, he said, well, ask. Did you ask? And then just in that moment, I just asked, like, what is my purpose? And it just came down. And I said, you want to know what my purpose is? To bring truth, love, and justice to the world. And all the men were looking at me like, yeah, that's it. Like, you can just tell that the certainty behind that this is, you can get the reality and the sincerity and the authenticity that came through. And so since then, and I question the doubt with me and just the way I am I just taking that from Lawrence saying that in the retreat, and it just came down through my neurons firing, just a nice thought that fits the bill at the time. But I keep asking, and it's resonating with me that so over the different work with the men's team, I refined this to come to bring truth forth with love, to serve justice. Justice being balance. Justice is simply balance. It's simply scales of justice. Star Wars, bring balance to the Force. Like in the end, Darth Vader brought balance to the Force. So Yoda and the types, they never were around judging Darth Vader. They didn't see them getting angry about it. They just had a job to do, and that was to kill him or whatever, because he was harming others, So there's no judgment in that sort of warrior energy that's just doing what's right. So that's the justice, the balance piece. And just to say serving justice, I used to say to bring truth forth with love, to create justice or something like that. And I realized it's to serve justice, and not serve like justice served here's somebody's head on a silver platter. That's kind of served to the king. That here you've got your dragon head or some enemy's head on a silver platter. Not serving, but serving justice that is already a universal principle. It's not something. Justice is balance, and that yin yang is at work as a force, as a piece of the universal force in nature, and polarities, masculine, feminine, electron, proton, light, dark, right, wrong. And which I think is a part of this whole agenda with the whole, transgenderism is a thing. It's been around forever. But what's happening now, I believe, is people who are confused are being weaponized, and this is all part of that dark agenda, is to invert the truth. There's a reason that they call, why is it called dark? What's with the dark thing? Because it's hidden. Like they say, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing people he didn't exist. So it's not the evil and the terror and the awful, the killing and all the horror. That's the real fundamental wrong, if you will. It's deception. It's untruth. It's the lies that are the problem. So the dark is what needs the light. Like the light doesn't need anything. If you shine light on the dark, then the book of Revelation, you reveal what has been hidden. So serving justice is serving a force that's already within nature. I'm going to help bring about that balance, and all of us can do that. And how we do that is by bringing the truth forth with love. So love, to me, judgment is what you do in order to remove the love or to cover it up. Love actually can't remove it. This is, again, my personal experience and theory, but it's experience. A lot of this is coming from deep, days on end contemplating these questions. What am I? What is love? What is life? And you're actually getting in tune with the moment and trying to have a direct experience of the truth of what's behind those questions, not some intellectual understanding, but the understanding does come with it sometimes. So love, to me, is sort of a firstborn child of truth. And some people, love is at the top of the hierarchy of what is, let's say, love is the most important thing. And maybe from a human point of view, it kind of sort of is, but I think of it more as, again, another yin-yang there somehow, that it's truth and love. If let's suppose that love is the most important thing, and that's actually the case, what would that be then? That would be the truth then. Right? If love is the most important thing, then that's the truth. Fucking truth wins again, pardon me. Truth wins again, It's not about winning, but that's all there actually is the truth. I'm trying to make that point, that whatever is the case, that's the truth. So it doesn't matter what conditions are in place, it's the truth. And so judgment is not to be confused with discernment or evaluation or assessment. That's what those who would want to forward an agenda that they're in control of and controlling others would want us to believe, would have us believe that just thinking about one thing being right and another thing being wrong, or one thing being better, it's all equal, and all that whole thing. What's really, is it equality or fairness? Is more, because the scale, if you've got that much weight on one end of the scales, then that's just the way it is. That's the fairness of it all, is that weight will go down and the other will go up. But that's out of balance, so you want to do what you can to bring it into balance. But you don't tie weld the freaking scales at a perfect 90 degree to make it in balance. That's not balance, that's control. You got to allow the scales to do their dance. This is nature at work. And so bringing balance, bringing justice, serving the principle of justice is only going to happen from a place of bringing your truth forth without judgment. So judgment, not to be confused with discernment, evaluation, is discernment and evaluation adding a negative energy behind it, emotion, like, Trudeau, like, what an idiot, go on about Trudeau. Well, how about just, that doesn't seem like a good idea, Mr. Trudeau, and here's why. Just speaking your truth, just matter-of-factly as you see it, without making him, the human being, the conscious being, wrong, because there's nobody that's ever going to respond well to judgment. You're not, it's the Aesop's fable, the man with the coat, that fable. It's a man walking across the bridge, I think, one time. He's got a kind of a long trench coat on, and the sun and the wind decide, who's gonna win this bet of getting this man to take his coat off. And the wind just starts blowing like mad. And the man's walking, holding on his coat and blowing harder. And the man holding on to the bridge, and he's just holding on for dear life and keeping his coat on. And finally the wind's out of breath and gives up. And the sun comes out from behind the cloud and shines. And in 30 seconds the man takes his coat off, There's a lot of wisdom in that. So I had that book as a child, Aesop's Fables. It's like, if you want to change somebody's mind, they're not going to do it with you screaming in their face, What's lasting is people choosing to be a certain way by their own will, and everybody agreeing to it because it works for everyone. That's going to last. What's not going to last is forcing people to be a certain way. Eventually there would be nothing left. People's spirits would be like, who wants to live in that kind of dystopia anyway, even if you're right at the top of it? We've got some examples of that today. North Korea, right? So, and the truth that you're bringing forth with love, which is the absence of judgment. I don't know if I said that. Like this, love is the absence of judgment. It's really more like love is there. Love is what's there when you remove judgment. It's just kind of the glue, the essence of all that is. It's, to me, love is the energy of the manifest. Love is what brings forth the universe. It's creation. And I think there is a reason why, like, love is considered a feminine energy. It's soft, it's, and truth is, and Mother Earth, Father in heaven, and people get all hung up on that. It's like, it's not saying one over the other so much as it's just consciousness is a singular thing. There's nothing else, it's just consciousness. And then there's all the stuff within the consciousness, the content. That's the creation, the feminine rising and falling. But the consciousness is just this pure singular isness, let's say. So that's why it's referred to as Father to me. And I'm still not completely convinced that that's quite right, because there's probably some sort of because it's all beyond duality ultimately. So even this kind of language falls short, because in the state of union and enlightenment, there's no this and that or object, subject. It's all, that's why people burst out laughing when they get the cosmic joke, because none of that makes any sense anymore. It's like, wow, was I ever being fooled? Like, a joke has been played on me. It's all one. And so back to, I'm jumping all over the place, but back to the truth. All we have is our own truth. But each of us has a drop of the ocean, let's say, to share, that makes up the whole, the ocean. And without each drop, coming forth and proclaiming, I am this drop, and I have this to say, then the ocean would never be complete. So we need everybody's voice to get to the truth. And this is very logical in a way too. The more people who speak, it's just the more heads, the better. The more there's just, actually, that's all talked about with Jordan Peterson and Lomberg and the gang there. Who else am I thinking of? Can't remember the name right now, but that it's actually been, there's actually a whole theory put forward that take children on the spectrum, autistic children, that they have incredible gifts, right? They're amazingly, apt at certain things. If you gave a group of 10,000 autistic people a job to solve global warming, you might get one that figures it out. So it's just like the sheer numbers of people involved give rise to new technologies and problem solving, right? So each of us needs to bring our truth forth, and I feel like I've been totally toxifying myself in that I'm keeping it within. Like, I don't want to, so much I've had to say through all this that I've kept so much of it. And a big part of my issues personally is I get angry. I don't bring the truth forth with love a lot of the time. I get disappointed in the people that I love and care. You were such a warrior for justice and truth, and what happened to you? Now you've picked a side, but then I'm over there really picking a side, making them wrong, and that doesn't bring anybody together or solve anything. The conversation ends as soon as somebody's made wrong. So yeah, and that's what ultimately we're kind of up to on Enlightenment Intensive is, you see these people breaking through, or even sort of on their way, making these baby step sort of breakthroughs that speak the actual truth. They flow forth as a living truth. They're doing this inquiry into whatever the question, who am I, what am I, what is life, what is love, what is another, what is this, and start to sound like a living sage right in front on my little retreats, that they just have broken through and are actually able to speak word for word the truth of their own experience. That's all that whole idea of, we only have our own little subjective universe, but we can get to the bottom of that if we really spend time and energy and what can happen is people can directly realize that there is no separation, that we're all one, and then it makes no sense at all to do anything but support each other, and because you are me, why would I want to hurt myself, right? And it makes also sense as to why this idea is Nietzsche and all that, God is dead, and nihilism is a big problem. Like, if you don't want to exist, it's hard to argue against that. Like, if you don't want to exist, then why would anybody want to help anybody, or but maybe it's as simple as that. Like, what do you want? Like, agony or joy? Like, it's a pretty simple choice, because we can have either. We can make choices to be living together in joy. Want to take down Han's books, Joyfully Together. It's about community and supporting one another through our hardships and celebrating one another when we're in our gifts.
That's an interesting thought too. Just to what do we do? Like purpose, a sense of purpose individually. That's such a big piece of all of this too. Whether it's getting involved in community, whether it's self-discovery, the purpose can change too, can it? Like, what
Right.
ultimately, what is purpose?
I do think purpose can change. There are levels. This is the paradox that there's levels to enlightenment, and so a person, if you've got a family and children, I mean, your purpose can be as simple as that, to provide for them. But I think a person can have a purpose that, like this purpose of bringing truth forth with love to serve justice, when I really open up to that, I should be able to do that anywhere all the time. I don't have to be on a special enlightenment retreat or on a podcast, or I can do that shoveling my sidewalk. I'm creating balance, you might say, order, by cleaning the snow. Nobody's going to slip. If I do it with love, without judgment, is this whole idea of you can taste somebody's love in the food. Somebody's cooking it with love in their hearts, and being the truth, like being fully with what is, without any resistance. That right there, I can live my, what sounds like a pretty wide context of a purpose in a simple act as shoveling the snow. So this can be somebody's purpose. I personally think that we have, each of us, a very unique purpose, and once it's realized, it's pretty much fundamental. That's it. It's like why I am here, in the same sense we're talking last night, like the universe, being intelligent as it is, would naturally create everything that's needed to create balance, to bring about balance. So if each person is allowed to and encouraged to and fostered into their gifts, as from children, find out what they're naturally gifted at, you'd have just the right number of engineers and doctors and all the things you need to make a society in balance, because it's in their nature already. And this is where the whole thing, like, there's no answer, because the Industrial Revolution, let's go back to that. People love to diss on that, and which is kind of like, do you remember last week? Like, thank God for the Industrial Revolution at minus 30, like, so, but the whole idea that the public school system was basically created and designed, the content was created to create minions, workers, to serve the industrial complex, and it's actually pretty much known that's what went down. Where was I going with that? Now that said, I forgot.
It's like a natural balance,
right?
And
so we're coming back. Oh yeah, and the purpose piece, right? So that really, a system like that would totally destroy, greatly reduce the chances of somebody finding their purpose, because what it's all about is the market. Well, just find, what am I going to do with my life? Well, I'm going to do whatever, where the jobs are, where the money is, and then you end up with people in jobs they hate, or just numb in their job. Some people just sort of lost just about the numbers, getting the money, and no real sense of meaning and purpose behind it. So I believe that's where we're at. We're coming around. It's the alchemical reaction that we talked about last night, that all of this is coming together, these polarities. You see so much polarity in the world today. It's you could think of it like a chemical, or like alchemical reaction, in a sense where you put some of these elements together in a test tube or in a beaker, and watch the reaction. It's very violent, it's very energetic and dangerous, but in the end you have a new creation, something beautiful and very functional, and I think that's what we're up to here. And which is all in the book of Revelation, that whole thing, and the Hopi prophecies and so on. So it makes a lot of sense to not get caught in the fear and judge. And if nothing else, like, we could look at it from a practical point of view. It just doesn't work. It's never worked, never has, never will. Buddha, the hatred will not cease by hatred, but by love alone. You can't.
So what do we need to do, like individually, or what do we not need to do? What do we need to not do? What do we need to do, or what do we need to not do?
I that's a good question. Like, because as I say all this stuff, it's like, this to me is our aim. Like, we should have an aim. Up. Like, yet there's a place for all. Everybody plays their part. So what are we to do? This is not a direct answer here. I'll get that, but it's like there is the madman that shows up and does something insane and horrible and terrible. Somehow plays a part in all of that something is learned from that. And so I'm not saying that I know. I certainly don't, and I don't think anybody does know. As soon as we start saying, you do this, you do that, like trying to control everybody and tell people what to do, we're off course. And we can offer what we think, but it's ultimately each of us that has to tap into our own intuition and higher self, if you want to call it, and follow the pull. So if that's my answer to that question, is follow the pull. Like, what do you being your higher conscious self, not your impulsive, egoic, fill your desires self. That's why it's such a hard question to answer, because depending on where you're at, and if you're an addict of some kind, then trying to talk like, follow your pull and what's your intuition telling you to do just makes no sense at all. They're just after the next fix. But you might be able to get, in fact, apparently that's how it starts, is the addict just kind of realizes that their life is in shatters, and that their loved ones are in sorrow because they've lost them, and something, just a little spark of light, gets through to them enough that they just go to a dryout center or take one action away from the hell that they're in and further heading towards into the other direction. It's like the John the Baptist, repent. The original meaning of repent is turn around. So you can always know where to go as long as you know where you shouldn't go. So when each of us knows, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be going for another cake, or
Whatever the fix is.
Another pack of smokes, another night of binging. It's okay to, I'm not saying you can't enjoy things in life and enjoy the sensations of life, but it's when we get caught up and so attached to it that it consumes us. We know we shouldn't do another one of those things or whatever it is. That therefore the direction to go, if we know that it's not that way, it's very simple to know where to go. You just go just turn 180 around, and that's the direction you need to go. So not to the fridge, but to a help center that's going to help you with your eating problems. We're just using that as an example. Call the quit smoking line. Don't beat the person you're with. Hug them.
Like little improvements every day anyway. Are we growing, or are we just falling apart here?
Just repent, turn around. We know when we're up to no good. But we have to, I think, so many people that all this was just like, I'm just, going to watch Yellowstone tonight and have a drink, and, I loved Yellowstone. Had a lot of controversy. Like my mind was just, oh my God, is this like, I don't know if this is good or not. Seems to be fighting the good fight, but seems to be, glamorizing killing and all that. So I'm just saying that a lot of people, this is just Greek to them. You have to first of all be interested in what's true beyond this material realm. Let's say you have to, and beyond your own personal satisfaction. If you don't get to a point where you are thinking beyond your own little confines, then none of this matters to someone like that. So it's just, and maybe that's okay too. Like, who the hell am I to say, you know? My buddy Daynard, you know, Daynard Willisco? Yeah, he's, well, Candace that directed the films that we shot there. Daynard used to be with her. Anyway, he says that all the time. Like, who am I to say that this addict shouldn't have the next fix? Because I don't know what it's like to be them. There is some wisdom in that, in a sense. Like, if you haven't, if you hit rock bottom, you will turn around because it's rock bottom. There's nowhere else to go but the other direction. So there's a certain argument that, yeah, you just need to let people go all the way down. And it's a scary thought, especially with children and stuff like that are, at some point, you need to let, if it's an addiction, it's not what I'm talking about, addiction per se, but it's a good example of sort of being lost and not connected. It's just a point where you got to just let them go, and they might overdose. But if you don't believe in a soul and all that, then that's a really scary. Oh, no way! I can't let them die. Like, death is the end of the bloody world, and it's not. And how do I know this? Well, I did have one experience where I was literally out of my body, floating around. You know, people have these experiences. These things are. Some people are so locked into the material realm that any mention of anything that's outside hard, material science is just completely. And those people are in for a big surprise when they cross over, because there is something else. It's the only thing I feel I know for sure. And you can have that experience even within the body. You can directly experience your own soul, your energy, spirit. For sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. And then, little side note, my buddy Gary Wojciechowski's got this tape in his storage locker, old VHS tape of a CBC show that was one of those weekly shows. They do some sort of special topic, and it was Secrets of the Vatican. And you could see the CBC logo down there and everything. It was this junior priest in charge of PR or whatever brought the reporter down into the catacombs and showed them, yes, the Catholic Church once did believe in reincarnation, and that was removed from the doctrine. So reincarnation is no longer true. But in every other religion, it's considered real. So why I bring that up is that. There's a soul and there's a journey that it takes, and you're not going to help that journey much if you're just living life to fill your own personal needs. So we're here to learn something. This is a school, it's more than anything else to me. This life on planet Earth is a school to learn things, to advance eventually into a higher realm, to light beings. I believe this stuff, ascended masters, the whole thing, Why? Intuitively, things that happen, prayers that come true. Archangel Michael is probably the closest divine entity or otherworldly entity to me. I feel most closely personally in touch with that being, and I can't tell you how many times I've had been struggling to get something done, or and just say this prayer: Holy Archangel Michael, Prince of Heaven's army, defend me against the powers of darkness, and have the thing just disappear instantly. Like, it's remarkable. It's like the statistics are too strong to say, oh, it's just coincidence. Yeah, but okay, let's not do it. Let's see how this struggle goes, and Okay, I'll say the prayer, and it's gone. Like, oh, struggling to get a door lock is stuck or something, some silly little thing. And these statistics, mathematics doesn't lie, right? At some point, the chances of that just happening coincidentally is statistically much less likely than the prayer answered the call, right? So I've experienced that kind of stuff, lots of it.
Love it. So maybe just tell me a little bit about the Enlightenment Intensive, how that came to be, and then I'll ask you your final thoughts.
Well, the Enlightenment Intensive, in a word, is about truth. And the sole purpose of the Enlightenment Intensive is to give the participant the best possible opportunity at having the deepest direct experience of absolute truth possible. It is one of the most unique forms of spiritual seeking you're going to find in that it's the unbelievably ordinary path in that you're relating to another human being. The work is done in dyads. And it is a beautiful thing to see two people, one sort of pouring their heart and soul out to another, or hasn't got to that yet, but struggling their way through their chaotic mind until they finally get this first sense of themselves that they are not their thoughts, but they're the one that's thinking the thoughts. Just have that. That in itself is a big shift, to just realize that, to de-identify from the constant thought, and that's not me, but I am having that. I am aware of the thoughts, and then there's this separation that occurs from the consciousness and that which it's conscious of. And it's a weird, it's in that self. So I just myself say, well, what am I doing? Separation. We want to go towards union. Yes, well, it's like sort of separating it's actually not separating anything. It's realizing that there was something that was aware all the time, fundamentally, but there was no awareness of that awareness, no awareness of that which is aware. Just complete identification with story, mind. And so the moment one realizes, oh, wait, I'm not any of that. I'm not my feelings. I'm not my pain in my body. I'm not my thoughts. Usually starts with thoughts, What am I then? And then it's that which is aware, and we work toward using a technique, direct union with the truth. It's so that it comes a point where it is absolutely self-evident that it's so hard to say it, but it's like all is one and one is all, that there is this union between the yin and the yang, and the one and the all, the whole and the part. And it's about the most fulfilling, satisfying experience a human being can have. I personally believe it's why we're here, is to wake up to our true nature. And because from that place, then, and that's a piece of it, is it's recognized, it's realized as truth. This is actually the way it is. This isn't like some, altered state. It's the natural state. We're in the altered state on the average day of the illusion, the dream, the bad drug trip, of our own personal hells that we go through in our minds, and to recognize that it's just it's all just happening, sort of thing. There's no need to be excited about it or upset about it, and you could be all of those things too and be okay with that too. It's not to say that pain doesn't exist, but there's no longer resistance to what is the case. And how can you suffer without resisting something? And how are you going to resist anything when it's all you? What are you going to suffer from if it's you, everything being the consciousness that you are, that I am. That's what I am, right? So that's what the Enlightenment Intensive is about, and what came up for me today to say about it anyway. And it works, and it's fun. Like, you don't have to. I'm nothing against things like Vipassana, which is a beautiful experience, but it's hard. Like, you gotta sit still and in that chair for hours on end. You don't have to sit still on Enlightenment Intensive. You don't have to stay quiet the whole time. There is a silent element where there's no socialization. You're not socializing or interacting in any sort of common sort of way with people. You're deeply relating inside this space of a dyad, taking turns, listening, sharing back and forth. And what are you gonna have a problem with when you realize it's all you? And the keyword realize, one of the things that's realized is that it was always this way. I've been missing it, overlooked the truth that it's one thing. And that's why they call it self-realization. It's not like you're attaining anything. You don't gain anything. You lose all the illusion. And you're left with the truth.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Travis.
It's good. It's a good conversation. I am curious what your final thoughts are, because we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of various things.
I think that's where we're going. This is the Great Awakening, right? There's a lot of reason to celebrate here. We're gonna realize in time, and I think it is inevitable. Like, it's inevitable, and the gargoyles, they're on the church there because they have a job to do. And I'm not quite sure why why that is. I don't know if I understand this yet. But in the same way that if you help a butterfly out of the cocoon, you'll kill it. It'll die. It needs to go through that struggle that strengthens itself. So getting into some people, the argument against cesarean births, sometimes I don't pick a side or anything, because there's always a time and a place for everything. Sometimes you just need to do things that aren't considered natural. But as a species, we need to go through this and or die and perish. And there's just nothing in me that resonates as true, that it's our time to end as a species. And that all these folks, people that are so easy to point the finger at, they're just doing their job. I don't want to go all Bible thumping on people, but I'm going to talk. I like the Bible, and I love Jesus, and I think there's something to all this that. And you can get into the work of David Hawkins, and there's a lot of scientific, new science, that supports these books being true, to a degree. I'm not going to get into the Bible's the absolute truth and nothing else. That's not what I'm saying, but the book of Revelations clearly states that it's God who declared the war, sort of thing. It is God's hand at work through all this awfulness that comes down on the planet. And one would say, why would, so Satan, fallen angels, still came from God. The joke's on him. He thinks, if you want to look at it in that term, and I do think that there's some truth that's both material and spiritual realms at work here, that the dark forces might think that they're doing something in their greedy little favor, but actually they're just another tool of the divine at work, creating a birth process that's necessary so that we go through a struggle to strengthen our beings and evolve into a new type of being, light beings. That's what so many of the prophecies seem to be pointing at, to become radiant beings of light, less dense, vibrating at a higher frequency, less material, more energetic, let's say. So how long will that take? I don't know, but it'd be cool to be around for it and be alive for it. Next life, if I don't get there in this one.
There you go.
That's it. Cool, man.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.